Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Progressive Mind Show. We want to welcome everyone to this beautiful platform. This is the Community Building Show. My name is Sena, aka Alinco. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health and the pandemic. We'll wait to give you the details for the reason we're here today. We'd like to take the Captain Mike segment. Right after that, we'll be going into the thick of things. I'd like to welcome you all to the #1 community building show in the world, the Progressive Mind Show. It is a very beautiful day, and would encourage you all to share the feed as you just joined us. We just literally got our website, no, our YouTube situation taken care of. So we're currently live on our YouTube page, which is the Progressive Mind Show. Like I said, the show will continue right after the Captain Mike segment. Stay tuned. You are most welcome. We need your participation this evening to deal with the topic at hand. Captain Mike will take you from here, brother. This is Chicago, and we're used to a very unpredictable weather situation, but I know you have some updates for us. Please take it from here.
Well, this week is going to be completely different from last week. We're going to jump from below average temperatures to above average temperatures. Just like you said, it's Chicago weather, so we don't mess around with gradual heating. So we're just going to jump right into it. Right now, we got 76 degrees. Winds are out of the south at 14 miles an hour at Midway Airport. So when you know we got strong south winds, we get warmer temperatures. So we're going to keep that. So for the rest of tonight, we're going to look at a low of around 65 degrees.
Chicago, and we're used to
in the 70s. We're used to the lower 70s right now. And remember last week, we only got around to a high of about 65 all week. So right now we're going to get a low of 65 tonight. And we're going to call it a slight possibility of rain tonight. Tomorrow, high of 84 degrees, possibility of rain, mostly cloudy skies. It's going to be really windy for Thursday and Friday. Going to keep that wind going from the south. Saturday, winds are going to slow down just a bit, and we're going to have southwest winds, high of 83 degrees. We're going to keep those 80s throughout Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And our best possibility of rain is going to be Wednesday, as we have a cold front move through later in the night. That's going to clear some things out and cool it out for next week. Next week is going to be a little bit cooler, kind of like what we had last week, but this week is going to be quite warm. So if you like warm weather, this is your week, but it's going to be cloudy and maybe just a chance of showers here and there, except for Wednesday. Looking at sports, the Sox defeated the Minnesota Twins 2-1. The Cubs are going to be playing Washington tonight, the Nationals, at 6:40. And looking at English Premier League scores, Everton defeated the Wolves 1-0. Newcastle defeats Sheffield U 1-0. Aston Villa takes out Tottenham 2-1. Arsenal defeats Crystal Palace 3-1. Liverpool drops Burnley 3-0. West Ham U 3, West Bromwich 1. And now getting into our health and fitness report. There are good things about summer that I like, and there's some bad things. One bad thing, mosquitoes. Right now it's kind of dry, so we don't have to worry too much about it, but we are going to pick up on our precipitation, and they're going to be around. So what are some of the ways we can mitigate the threat of mosquitoes? Because remember, mosquitoes do spread germs. They spread diseases such as West Nile disease, dengue fever, or malaria. So one of the first things we can do is use insect repellent and use the research tool at the cdc.gov to find out which repellent is right for you. Make sure you cover your arms and legs with long sleeve shirts and pants. And if you have a baby or a small person that you're pushing around in a stroller, make sure you cover that stroller with netting to make sure mosquitoes don't feast on your little baby. Don't spray repellent on your skin under the clothes. Remember to spray the repellent on the clothes on the outside of your clothes. Apply sunscreen first if you're going to use it, then repellent. Choose an EPA registered repellent. You can find a list of those on the CDC website. Use screens on your windows and doors. Use air conditioning if possible. Don't let it sit around in flower pots or pools or tires. Make sure you dump all water you find. So those are some of the ways you can react and keep those mosquitoes at bay. So with that, Cena, we're going back to you.
Thank you so much for this beautiful update. And we are excited about the partnership between United Airlines and Ghana. At this moment, it's official that United will be flying to Ghana directly from Washington.
Yes.
So great news for a lot of Ghanaians who have to be transiting through Europe and all that. So maybe on another day, hopefully next week or so, we would have you give us a little bit more updates on that.
All right.
Sounds
And
good.
we can talk to some of the pilots who've done that trip. That's a 787 trip. I fly the 737, so I don't get to actually fly that trip. But maybe you can try to find one of the sisters and brothers that actually do that trip, and they can give you their experiences.
That would be nice. That would be definitely nice. So we'll be looking forward to that.
All right. We'll
All
see
right,
you next week.
Great. Hey, man, thanks so much for the update. Again, enjoy the rest of the evening. Hopefully, we'll see you next week.
Hey, take care.
Same here, bro. So that was Captain Mike's with this segment. We are back on the show this evening. Once again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Progressive Mind Show. Today's topic is mental health and pandemic. Mental health and the pandemic. Staying balanced is what we want to focus on. We will begin by looking at the statistics and some facts surrounding how the pandemic has affected mental health of Americans, with a special focus on communities of color, specifically the Black community here in the United States. It's being said and tooted around that 1 in 10 adults in America reportedly have some form of mental health issue before the pandemic started, actually. But now reports are saying that 4 out of 10 American adults reports symptoms of anxiety or depression disorder during the pandemic. And this is according to Kaiser Family Foundation, which is a non-for-profit organization that focuses on national health issues. Although there has been overall increase in mental health issues that have been reported during this pandemic, communities of color have been affected disproportionately. That's the word. Now, 48 is also being tooted around. Some of the news around is that 48% of non-Hispanic Black adults are more likely to report symptoms of anxiety and/or depression disorder. Sorry. Now, we also have reports that Latinx adults are 46% more likely to report such symptoms. 41% of non-Hispanic whites are likely to do same. Keep in mind that historically, communities of color have mainly faced challenges when it comes to mental health and general health care. So joining us this evening to look at the overall impact of the pandemic on mental health, focusing on the Black community, are these great gentlemen and lady who are in the studio to help with the discussion. We'll start with Pastor AKWETEY AKRONG, who is an assistant pastor with Temple of Victory here in the city of Chicago. He's also a nurse, a mental health nurse practitioner, again in the city of Chicago. Pastor AKWETEY is not a stranger on this show. You're welcome, my brother.
Hello, how are you doing?
My pleasure, and I am doing very well. Next to Pastor AKWETEY is Heather Duke, MFT. She's also a marriage and family therapist. Yes. She's a marriage and family therapist with her practice at Burridge here in the city of Chicago. Heather Duke, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And then last on the list is Solomon Y. DARKO. He is LPC, MBA, MPFL. He would explain all of that. The technologies are huge, right? He is the CEO and owner of Deeper View Counseling at WATERBURY, located in Connecticut. So we do have experts here. So Mr. Solomon Y. DARKO, you are welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Excellent. And just a little background into this great gentleman. Solomon is, of course, he apart from what he does have an extensive experience basically working with divisional family, working as divisional family therapy. He's also a professional teacher, proud to becoming a mental health counselor. He's gained gained his education in University of Bridgeport of Connecticut. He also gained his MBA. No, I'll say one of his degrees at University of Ghana, and not. He didn't end there. Prior to University of Ghana, he was also at University of Cape Coast. A lot of accolades for this gentleman, and so I would like to pause here. For Heather, also apart from what she does, did also get her degree. I would say master's degree in counseling with emphasis in marital family therapy from Capella University. She also has the GADAM level 1 and GADAM level 2. Now, my brother AKWETEY is also a nurse practitioner, like I said, an assistant pastor. Brother, what else are you into so our audience can get to know you better?
Into a lot of things. I am one thing that a lot of people don't know is I'm actually a military veteran. I was in the United States Marine Corps for 4 years. I was at 2002 to 2006. I've been a nurse for 10 years. Nurse practitioner was just recently. Been working in psychiatry and mental health for the last 3 years. So right now I'm focusing on actually getting into everything and then actually prescribing a lot of medications. I actually have the authority to prescribe now. So we do interviews and prescriptions of medications now.
Great. Well, so thanks for giving us that bit more background of what you do. So today we wanted to look at the pandemic and mental health. This is Mental Health Month Awareness, May. Today, of course, is May 19th, 2021, and we couldn't pick a better time to do this. Your overview, your general view on how the pandemic has affected people in general. Like you guys are on a daily basis attending to people who are struggling or may have been struggling due to the pandemic, or probably, people who may have conditions prior to the pandemic. So I'll just say maybe in a minute, tell us your general overview of how hectic things have actually been from us looking on from the outside. I'll start with a lady, Heather.
Yes. Okay, so just dealing with the mental health under the COVID, I've noticed that a lot of individuals are sad, depressed, they're bored, they're tired. The main theme I hear is a lot of monotony due to things being closed, very limited access to things they used to do. Definitely it's creating a lot of anxiousness. They needing a change, a shakeup in their life. So I noticed that's kind of like what we're processing in session. And I do see how the COVID being on lockdown has affected individuals and the way they connect to their jobs and their families. So I'm really just providing a space for them to process everything. And I just wanted to add that I'm also noticing when the pandemic first happened last year around this time, people had to be confined in spaces, couldn't do a lot of things. And it caused, to be honest, like bad memories to resurface, a lot of childhood traumas, and they needed a place to go and finally vent and talk or even decide, you know what, let me try therapy, because for a while before the pandemic, we weren't in high demand like we are now.
Well, great overview. Thank you so much, Pastor AKWETEY. I think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, as Heather said, it's really affected people. You gave some statistics that 1 in 10 people were complaining of mental health issues before, and then now it seems as it's 4 in 10. So with the pandemic, I'm actually very, very glad that you titled it Finding the Balance. And that's what it did. It took people off balance. So in mental health, it's not just your mind. It's everything that you do that contributes to your mental health. So the food you eat, the exercise that you get, the communing with your neighbors, your family members, going to church, going to work. It's funny. A lot of people complain about going to work, but when you couldn't go to work, then you see even more complaints. See, going to work actually helps you to fulfill certain needs that you have to accomplish things. So when people are at home and they're not accomplishing anything, they're sitting, they're eating, and a lot of us they call it now the COVID-15 at home. They're not able to go to the gym and work out. They're not able to go to the church and worship. That balance is completely off. So things that normal people use to keep grounded, We're not there anymore. And now you're faced with thinking so much, as Heather said, thinking so much about the bad things that are going on. So you see that you probably lost your job. You don't have money. The bills are stacking up. You might be losing your house or losing your home. You see your family members dying, and people that you know dying from the COVID. You also see that you're at home. You don't have anything to do. You're bored out of your mind. And I like to go to the gym. A lot of people were crying because they couldn't go to the gym. But then going to the gym actually helps people to stay healthy. You know, when you go to the gym, you have the dopamine rushing to certain areas. You have a better self-image. You're able to go and get some fresh air if you're going outside. All those things were locked down. So the balance that actually kept people standing still and staying afloat and having that mental soundness was completely gone. So people now are forced staring at four walls, and as I was saying, even it caused relationship issues. So we saw an increase in domestic violence. We saw an increase in even, I guarantee you, I think within the next 6 months to a year, you're going to see a lot more divorces as a result of being confined with somebody who you probably only interacted with 6 to 8 hours a day. Now you're with them 24 hours a day, and you realize, hey, I don't like this person at all.
Yeah, that's happening.
So all those kind of things, when you see everything around you shut down, the balance is taken away, and you're only able to focus on the negative. And that's really what has put people into deep depression and also a lot of anxiety.
Wow. Very, very great, I'll say, overview from what the two of you have just given us. Mr. Solomon.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I want to say thank you to the other two panelists. They have actually exhausted the list. But just to add to what they have said, I mean, in my practice over here, I have had a lot of people experiencing deaths in their family, which of course arouses, other aspect of their mental health. The other impact to that it has actually have on the mental health of other families is that, for example, part of what I used to do before starting my own business was to actually take therapy to the families in their homes. And as a result of the pandemic, people were not going to the homes, and as a result of that, they were actually not getting the services that they needed to keep their balance. Other things too that I noticed based on my experience over here is that it affected people of color, especially in terms of their education, because most of these people of color, their parents are not well educated. To be able to help them even in their schools. So that also created a lot of anxiety, fear, concerns. And my other two panelists also said, actually, there have been reports that there have been increase in divorce rate because, until the pandemic, the way most of the American family system works is some of the people will go to work in the evenings, then their spouse will go to work in the mornings. So on weekends, they see each other and they are able to deal with each other.
Right.
Now, it's like they have to be in there, and with each other. And that also created a lot of stress. So these are but a few of some of the, the issues that arose as a result of the pandemic.
Wow, great point, great point. And what so something that stood out is it's funny, it's not funny, but sometimes we just have to make light of some of the situations, right? Basically, you are forced to entangle with the untangable. so it is something that is very, very serious. You have to, like you and Pastor AKWETEY and Heather eloquently said, you have to be stuck with people and be looking into someone that you probably wish you did not. And so thanks for really breaking it down. Now we want to see how. Now that's a great overview. Personally, I am sure that having dealt with a lot of patients or clients, people who come to you for services, I am sure there has been one or two cases that have stood out to you, and among all the things that you have. And Heather is just smirking to that, just like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So Heather, why don't you tell us that story?
A case that has stuck out during the pandemic.
Yeah, maybe a patient or a family that came to you. And I know you do grieving. We'll come to all that and all that. But yeah, a case that has stuck out to you.
Okay. Well, I think, let me just say what a theme that has stuck out is the breakdown of relationships. And it's pretty much like looking at how marriages are really changing under the COVID. And what I'm noticing, because I am a couples therapist, is that couples are willing to, they need to figure out what's going wrong now. The issues that we used to could sweep under the rug and it was very surface level. I really see that the married couples are really taking this time to fight, go finally to therapy, and are committed to the process. I just want to say big ups to the husbands who are showing up and doing the work and wanting to really trust a female therapist, specifically of color, to help them unpack a lot of things that they've been dealing with, because they were taught, take it, don't say anything, don't cry, you're the man. And now I remember one of my male clients came, he was having trouble, and he said, you know what, I'm tired of that, where men aren't supposed to cry. And he was like, so I learned to bottle things up and not say anything. But he was like, I'm tired of that. I need to cry. I'm going through a lot right now. And I just said, wow, the COVID is breaking some systems and ego and pride. So that was an interesting case that stood out, because most times men are very open. You know, they're just kind of looking and playing a role, but they were being, I think, more genuine and honest in the therapeutic realm, and they were trusting me as a woman. And that's what I like, to deliver the results.
Right. That's powerful. Can I just say Solo? No, I'll just say Solomon. Mr. Solomon, any particular case that stuck out to you, be it from, because I know you deal with children, adults, family, whatnot.
Yeah, so before I even go on, I would like to piggyback like briefly on what Heather said. So it is true. I am also seeing quite a significant increase in males actually coming to therapy because of the kind of stigma that used to be around like males trying to seek help.
Right.
But to answer your question, what I'm actually seeing is a lot of people coming in with depressive symptoms. And I can understand that. The reason why they are reporting that is the fact that they are confined. You know, you can imagine just being confined to a home with your children. You have to deal with the chaos. There's no outlet. So that has been the major issue that I am actually been seeing, in my practice.
Right.
Now, just to give a specific case, I had this case where the person came, and that is a man. He came and he was virtually crying. He was virtually, literally, like crying, saying that his whole family has broken down. He doesn't have any relationship with his wife. He doesn't have any relationship with his own mother because the mother is trying to get into their marriage. He doesn't have any relationship with, with the children. And in fact, as much as I have seen people with anxiety or panic attack before, that was like an experience for me where I actually saw the person walking into my office just with that. Yeah. And the anxiety was all surrounded by the fact that before then, he had an outlet where he would actually step out of the house, meet with friends, meet with other family members, take some drink, and then he would come home and then sleep. That is after work. But here's a situation where he could no longer even go and visit friends and families just because of the pandemic. So now, just like what Heather said, he had to deal with it. So it was a case that, as a matter of fact, I have been seeing them for some time now, and they have been able to even use that opportunity to rebuild, the family. So this is just a typical, scenario that I have actually experienced, and this actually stands out for me.
Thank you so much for a great insight to what you guys are dealing with on a daily basis. Pastor Ate, you have to preach on Sundays, and then I am sure after preaching, some people will come to you with your personal problems or pray for me. Even when you're not preaching, right? Even when you're at home as a pastor,
Yeah.
people call you to deal with personal issues, you pray for them, and then you go to your workplace and have to deal with, so.
More.
In all of this, man, which one, a couple, maybe one or two just, gets you or stands up to you? You want to share that story?
Yeah, what is this? Actually, this one is work related. It's a lady, and she already had issues before. So what we see with the COVID-19 is that people have underlying issues which have not been addressed. And with the COVID-19, it just compounds and makes it worse.
Right.
So somebody might be what we call an outpatient in my practice, an outpatient to where they're able to, come and see me or come and see a therapist and then go back home, to where things have become so extreme that they actually need to be inside the hospital for a significant amount of time. One case I can that really stood out to me is an interesting case. It's a woman in her 50s, and this woman actually has schizophrenia. She has clinical schizophrenia. So she also has a paranoid schizophrenia. On top of that, she has obsessive compulsive disorder. On top of that, she has what do they call that? Dissociative personality disorder.
Wow.
So those are three serious things. And one thing that she because she was watching certain TV shows, she adopted some of the personalities of the people in a TV show. So this woman was a woman who was raised in America, but when she presented to us, she had a British accent from nowhere. So watching TV and being confined in a room for such a long time, she just adopted that. Another thing about her is that she had extreme paranoia and OCD. So with the pandemic and people coming around her and trying to do certain things for her, she was very, very scared of COVID-19. She was extremely afraid of getting COVID-19. So she's constantly cleaning, constantly anxious about people touching her food. When she was in our unit, she was always saying, "Oh, well, who touched my food? Did anybody do this? Oh, I saw that the lid was halfway off. Did anyone go in and put something in my food? Oh, I saw a hair in my food." Listen, this woman was so slim. She was, I think, 5'1", maybe, and about 90 pounds when she got to us, because she's so scared of eating food because she doesn't want to contract the COVID-19. So that's one of the things that, as I said, she already had issues, but with COVID-19, it compounded things and made it even worse, to the point where she can't be handled outside the hospital. She actually had to come into the hospital so that she can even get her weight at a reasonable size, so that she can actually go back and then take care of herself, because where she was not capable of taking care of herself. What actually brought her into the unit is that she had a delivery driver to come and deliver some groceries to her. And I think he was doing something that she didn't like. So she took a knife and she started threatening him with a knife. So that's the condition that this woman was in. And then she had so many people were reporting it. So the police picked her up and then they brought her to our unit. So that's one of the extreme cases that I saw during the COVID-19. That, as I said, it wasn't good in the first place, but COVID-19 made it so much worse.
Again, beautiful and powerful insights you guys are sharing. Now, I'm wondering how you prepare yourself to take on these additional stresses that people bring up to you, right? Because these are people with a lot of issues, and on a daily basis, they are bringing these issues to you. How are you guys individually able to withstand every day these stresses and deal with them? Now, you say, yeah, you were trained for it, but even soccer players sometimes get tired. If you're a basketball player and you play, like you were trained for it, but you get tired. So how do you prepare yourself for this daily loads of stress that you deal with? Heather.
Okay, yeah. So I'm big. My motto is self-care. And I always say, even if you can carve out like 5 to 10 minutes of self-care, that is beneficial than not doing anything at all. And like you said, we have to counsel the clients and we have to write up the case notes and etc. And we do take that stuff with us. If you're human, you're going to take it with you. So in order to balance what I do, I swear by yoga. So I have a routine where I get up every morning at 5 a.m. and I set my TV, because I have like the Netflix where they have like the free yoga, and I just do my stretching and etc. And then from there, I start my day, because yoga has benefits. It makes you more mindful, more calm, more peaceful. So I'm kind of my chi. So when I'm hit with all of these things, I'm still and centered because I've done the yoga, and even after work, I go and process and do my yoga. So I push self-care for therapists as well as my clients.
Wow. Thanks for that insight. I mean, I think I've heard about yoga severally. I don't know when I'm going to start, but
You should start tonight.
Pastor, I know you would say you pray and all that, but I know you're someone who goes to the gym as well. But how big has prayer, been for you in all of this mix? Again, knowing that you're a pastor and you also do this job.
Well, for me, it's prayer. Prayer is always the basis for me, for the foundation for everything. But moving after the foundation of prayer, it's for me, it's service. So I do serve outside the church in a mental health capacity, but in serving and like teaching Bible studies and doing certain things administratively in the church, and then also preaching, that actually helps me to focus my mind on something other than mental health issues. As well as I said, once again, it's all about balance. So even with the exercise, our head pastor, I'm the assistant pastor. Head pastor is always making fun of me that I go to the gym and I break my ankle and I break my knees and I break my shoulders here over here. But I'm actually willing to do that because I really enjoy working out. So I lift weights and then I also play basketball. And those kind of things, you need to have a space where you are thinking about that thing, and that's all that you're thinking about. That the cares and the worries about your job, about your home, about your house are non-existent in those areas. And you're able to focus on you, your enjoyment, your health, and all those kind of things. That's where, as we were talking about, the balance comes from. If you're not able to compartmentalize those things and then push it aside and then focus on something that you enjoy, or something that will take your mind off all those kind of things, that's actually where you're able to get some relief. But you're not able to do those things, and those things are compounding and hitting you all the time. Sometimes you need to go and sit down in the corner and relax a little bit. So finding those different outlets, the prayer, the going to church and serving, and then also going to the gym and then working out, and then it just helps. I also, and a lot of people might find this amazing. I play video games. So when I have time, I play video games. My mom tells me I'm irresponsible as a grown man playing video games. But that also helps me because I actually play online with my brother and then another friend of mine from the military. So it's also a bonding time between us and a time that I can enjoy. So seriously, whatever it is, if you can find something that helps you to take your mind off the other cares and then put it into something where you enjoy, you're able to relax a little bit. It all helps to give you balance. Of course, things are in moderation. Don't go and then play video games 18 hours a day. That's definitely irresponsible. You can find some outlets and different things over here. Helps you to take your mind off the not so pleasant things.
What type of games do you play?
Oh, well, I'm a military man, so I pretty much play Call of Duty.
All of that. Okay.
Those exactly.
Look, man, I play soccer. That's my go-to thing. FIFA is my thing. I play soccer and I play with my friend Black Jesus all the time. That's all I do. He's the only person I play with, and maybe another friend, and that's the only game that I have. No, but that's very, very true. Thank you so much for sharing. Solo, how do you get a balance in all this? Does family, play a key role in you finding the balance as you handle all this stress day in, day out?
Well, my number one thing is meditation. Usually every morning I would like to meditate before I leave the house, and then by the close of the day I do some meditation. The second thing too that I do is to walk. In fact, I like walking, so even during the cold I try to walk down our streets from time to time, so that also helps me. What I've also noticed, which I've been using, is that in this field, it is just like being a mechanic or being a handyman. If you have the right tools, you will be able to do it very well. And then also you have to focus on the areas that you think you are an expertise. So I try to also make sure that I read occasionally, at least in the areas that I feel like I need to improve, I need to maybe give the right services. And then finally, I do pray a lot. And I don't know, but Pastor AKWETEY, I think spend, I'm like part of your video game time to pray too. So I do, I do pray. In fact, especially on weekends too, even though I've not been able to go to church face to face, I make sure that I get online to listen to our listening. And then I like listening to gospel music. These are the things that have been helping me. With family, I have to say that, yes, my family have been very supportive. At least just getting home to know that your family is there, they are there to welcome you, also give me that kind of strength to be able to continue in this field.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solomon. This pandemic has actually taught us a lot of things, many of which you guys are telling us now, and we really, really appreciate it. So you guys you talked about something significant. One thing that I got from all three of you is meditation, prayer, which takes us to spirituality, right? But in these days, right, everything has become very, I would say, physical. And I'll say, can I use the word canal, in the sense that a lot of people are purporting for the society to do things on your own, like, oh, you're your own, you got this, you got the power, you got the ability, you have everything, feel free to do whatever you want, be happy, right? Be happy in any way that you think that you can. Now, so it sometimes takes the shine or the emphasis of spirituality that, somehow it's not that necessary, anyhow. So, but you all mentioned that these things take you through your day. So we want to see it. So is that very important when you come? I mean, would you say is the most significant thing for you? Be it meditation, prayer, or yoga? Would you say among all the things that you do to get you stressed, would you place that at the top of it? Because I want to see how relevant that is in this pandemic times. If it's not relevant, has the pandemic revealed to mankind how important prayer or spirituality is to us as humans? And I think that's the point I'm trying to get to. Pastor AKWETEY, you and I know you'd like to talk about this thing, so it's easy for me to ask you this question. Please go ahead. Yeah, if you want to respond.
See, I mean, for me personally, I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself personally. As I said, I've been through the military, and I wasn't a desk jockey in the military.
Now you're my friend, so I know I can poke you like this.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Please make it brief, because I know you're a pastor too. So this is not Sunday. This is not Sunday.
Okay, I'll try to make it as brief as possible.
Thank you.
So I reflect on things I've gone through in the past. So as I said, I was in the military, and I wasn't a desk jockey. I was a combat engineer. So I was in combat. I went to Afghanistan for 7 months. I went to Iraq for 7 months. So it wasn't a pleasant ordeal. And the things I've gone through, like seeing true danger, getting shot at, getting blown up, and all that kind of stuff over here, it has taught me something about God and about me. So in this time, when I know that there are dangers around over here, I reflect on where God has taken me, where he has put me, and in my relationship with him. It gives me assurance, and it takes away my fear. So I don't fear certain things that most people would fear. Even if this is a possibility, I put myself in the hands of God, and that relinquishes me of any kind of fear that I have. So I'm not somebody who walks in fear. If I was to, God forbid, if I was to go and crash my car today, I'll be okay. Of course, I'm not going to be happy for my wife and my children, but I know that where I'm going, I'm assured that God is there and he's waiting for me with open arms. So the way I navigate over here, I just put most things in the back of my mind, and I understand that God is in control. And if God is in control, there's no one better to have control over my life. So that just takes away my worry. So I don't worry. I just don't worry about things. That's because of what I've gone through with God.
Wow. That's powerful. Thanks for sharing. I don't know, Heather, do you want to add to what he said?
Yes. Okay. Of course. So definitely, prayer is always number one on my list. That governs everything. My pastor Hughes of Pastor T.D. Hughes of Third Baptist Church, he pretty much is that foundation right now, because the church doors naturally had to close under COVID. So I was worried, like, what's going to happen? So he creates a platform every Sunday and does the remote church. And I noticed, and I was telling him, I said, Pastor, my attendance has increased because it's online. online, and I think I have more accessibility. I'm at home. I'm able to share the sermons that he produces. My mom pulls in and watches, some of my family, my cousins, and I actually attend church a lot more under the COVID. And as a pastor, he was saying the challenges was making sure he kept the community connected during this time. And I think he's done just a dynamic job. And I always say the church is my rock and my source. And Pastor Hughes' sermons have really carried me through working with sessions with people under COVID. Like, I have his sermons playing in my office before my clients come, so I can flow a lot better.
Okay. Wow. I don't know. Would that be the case for you as well, so, Mr. Solomon?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to it, I believe, again, and the rest of the panelists will agree with me, that when it comes to, especially those of us working in this field, we have come to realize, or at least, quite a number of us have come to realize that as a human being, we are made up of different aspects of us. So just take a car, for example. The car has the physical part. The car has the mechanical part. The car has the electrical part. The car has so many other parts. And sometimes you have to question, where is the connection between the electrical part and then the mechanical part? And that is how spirituality is, for mankind. If you forget that aspect of it, then that is where you begin to realize that you are always breaking down. So that is where I see meditation or I see spirituality in it. We need that kind of connection because the physiological part, the chemical part, the spiritual part, and then any other aspects. And that is what connects together to be the mental health.
Wow. See, thanks for sharing. I really, really love this, because for scientists, psychiatrists, people who do psychology, you study the mind and how it works, to be saying this is very powerful. This is profound, because a lot of times people tend to think that scientists do not necessarily believe in God or do not necessarily care about things of God, and because of the stuff they read and the research they do. And so for you as scientists to be saying what you're saying about God and the importance of God and prayer being the center of what you do and be the center that holds you, that keeps the balance of your life going, is very, very profound. And we are very glad that you're sharing this. It's 6:42 p.m. CST, Chicago. You're still watching the Progressive Mind Show with Alinco. And we are building our community through this dialogue. So we encourage you to share our feed when you come on. We are live on Facebook. It's Progressive Minds, and on YouTube it's Progressive Mind, the Progressive Mind Show. Please help by sharing the feed so that we can together build our community by sharing these types of discussions that may be benefit to your friend, your community member. And so we really, really want to encourage you in doing this. We would like to take a short break. When we come back, we would be going back to our panelists to tell us what they think the pandemic has done to mental health in the Black community and other matters. They are all professionals in various categories when it comes to mental health, and we'll be taking that. We'll also be reading the comments, some very, very interesting comments that have been shared. We will be reading your comments. So Mike, Emma, John, Joy, Baba, your comments will be read. Rebecca, your comment will be read right after this break. But while we're on break, we encourage you to share the feed, okay? Baba, I see you haven't shared it yet, so I told you I'll be calling you out if you don't share it. Thank you so much for doing so. Let's take this short break. We shall be right back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So Jocelyn just joined us. Jocelyn, share the feed. Rebecca, share the feed. Baba, share the feed. So we can, I think we're getting the feedback here. So let's try and see if we can take care of this. Please bear with us. Okay. That has been taken care of with your help. No, I'm just kidding. We will go back to our guest to help us with the discussion this evening, mental health and the pandemic. I'm sure if you're listening and I'm sure some of you are connecting with what being shared today because you're experiencing it. A lot of us have been experiencing all types of situations during this pandemic. So if it has in one way or the other, feel free to send your comment in or call into the show. It's 815-277-5047. Call in and share your experience to encourage someone. If you haven't and you still want to encourage someone, please feel free to do so. And I'd like to take the comment as they have come in. We have this one from Emma Noel. She says, Emma Noel says, stress, worries, and negative thoughts needs to be decreased. Immune system to fight against any kind of virus attacks. So thank you so much, Emma. I don't know if it's Emma or Emma, but thank you so much for sharing this. John says, there is always hope of light after the dark pandemic. Yes, absolutely. We are expecting great things to come our way after this pandemic. We have been praying and calling for it to go away. We have been declaring that it will go away, and finally it looks like things are looking good, right? Things are looking good. People are expecting to go to their festivals, their barbecues. Heather was agreeing, but it looks like her line dropped. Pastor AKWETEY is also expecting a lot of, barbecuing maybe, and bowling and all kinds of activities and church programs, soul winning, all of that. Joy is watching. Thank you so much, Joy, for chiming in. She says, Alinco, good job. Thank you so much, Joy, for always supporting. Baba says, thank you. Heather has to be here to hear this one. Okay. So someone was just, appreciating you, and I thought you have to be here. Okay. So thank you, Heather, for stressing the importance of self-care, which is a very, very good one. So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Rebecca says, I find the balance by the word of God. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Mm-hmm. And Dave Eid says, thank you for sharing hope with us. The Lord is our strength and a refugee in the end of days. And I'm a refuge. Okay. The Lord is our strength and refuge in this end of days. Okay. Thank you so much, Dave, for your comment. And we have, hey, good show, brother. Royal Black Jesus. Yeah, that's the guy I play my video games with, my FIFA games with. I beat him. Actually, I beat him all the time. No, it's even. He's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to do that. Very, very great brother. He is the owner of Trend Africa TV. Great online TV for anyone who wants to do a show or publicize their activity or promote any type of event. They cover weddings. They'll go live with your weddings, your whatever events. Great production company owned by Royal Black Jesus, Trend Africa TV. We are live on MyStar Radio as well, based in Washington, D.C. It's an online radio station, a Pan-African one. So thank you and welcome back again to the show. Now let's go to our panelists. We want to look at how the pandemic has affected Black communities disproportionately. I know there are some numbers out there, statistics. So maybe Heather, I don't know if you can help give us a breakdown of how mental health or the care for mental health issues within the Black community is disproportionate. And yeah, please go ahead if you have that data for us.
Okay, yes. So I don't specifically have a number, but let me talk about what I've noticed with happening in the Black community as it pertains to the mental health. So fundamentally, the Black community needs to address the mental health needs from the top to the bottom to all ages, from the Black men to the women to the children. I always like to say it starts in the school system. Like, we need to properly have licensed counselors in school settings and actually use them, make it a safe place for children to vent about some of the issues that that are plaguing them, because that will help alleviate the teacher's stress when they're dealing with students that are just deemed behavioral problems. But if we had therapists in the school settings, we would understand what are some of these behavioral problems that the students are dealing with. Just second, our neighborhoods need to be built up. We need more rehab centers, more parenting centers, job trainings, counseling centers, temp agencies, because if you look at the Black communities and neighborhoods, they don't have strong funding, strong resources. It's always, lack of better words, you see like beauty supply stores being built, the liquor stores, the dollar stores. And I'm not saying, you know, that's not a need, but I think the bigger need is the centers that I just suggested that need to be infused in our community. And it's also about us having a conversation about why our mom, our sister, our dad, our brother, our cousins need to get involved in their mental health, and you need to support a relative or a friend of color that you know needs the proper care and services. We have to start stop with that stigma. Girl, you don't need the counseling, you crazy, etc. No, we have to dial it all the way back. I think you need to check in. So that's kind of how we have to recenter the conversation. We have to restructure it about the importance of mental health.
Thank you so much for a very brief but informative, submission when it comes to how mental health is an issue within the Black community. Mr. Solomon, in Connecticut, which also is, Connecticut is on the East Coast. I'm not sure the demographics in the area in which you serve, but tell us what you have noticed. And I think you mentioned something like that in your opening statement. Right. So tell us how it's affected Black communities. The state of mental health issues within the Black community.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to again piggyback on Heather, and maybe before I stop doing that, then I'll have to come before Heather next time. But what has been reported is that during this pandemic time, there has been a lot of people of color actually reporting of symptoms of anxiety and then depression compared to people who are of the Caucasian background. Now, according to the KFF, for example, as you mentioned even in your introduction, there's about 48.9% of other non-Hispanic. And then we have about 48% of Hispanic Black. And then we have about 46.3% of Hispanic or Latino. And then we have 42.4% of all adults. Now, if you look at the non-Hispanic white, we have about 40.9. And then the non-Hispanic Asian is about 33.1. Now, this is by KFF, that is the Kaiser Founding Foundation. Now, if you look at these cases, for example, one of them is the fact that, as Heather said, people of color, especially Blacks, they receive their mental health services through the school system, especially the children, through the school system. That is where they have their counselors, and they usually also see the school as an area of safety for them. So with the pandemic, what it means is that a significant number of these people do not get access to that. I'll have to tell you, in fact, I feel more ready to see adults these days, because when you are seeing children, it involves a lot. Like over here, we call it, DCF, that's the Department of Children and Family. And every little thing you have to report. And it is just me and my secretary. And I can tell you a whole lot of other people don't also feel comfortable to see children just because of that. So you can then imagine, okay, so where are these children receiving their cases, or where are they receiving their services?
Right.
Now, the number two thing too that we have found is that most of these, people of color, they have actually increased in the number of like using illicit drugs. That is, like substance abuse. It has become very, very common amongst them, because now that is what they have been using to say, okay, now this is helping me. And I will, in fact, I have to even say that even among the adults, those who come to me always request if they can get this medical card so that actually they can use it, just to deal with their, issues. Now, we also realize, in fact, even here in Waterbury, what I noticed is that majority of the people of color, they are into this field where they actually have to go to work. They are either CNAs, LPN, they don't work in the insurance industry, or they don't have this higher type of job. So for them, they are required actually to go to work. So if they have to go to work, then what it means is that they are highly exposed, to the pandemic or to the COVID-19.
Right.
And so that alone even increase, or
anxiety.
Is the anxiety and then the depression. See? So I can give you a lot more, but these are just a few of the list that I have. You see, so the people of color, they had little chance or opportunity to even practice some of this safety protocol for them to be able to just get away from. So these are just some of the things that created the problem among people of color.
Pastor AKWETEY, your take on this, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done. I guess the only thing that can be done is what? I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe Heather can help us.
Oh, no, there are things that can be done, but they're very hard things to do. Very, very hard things to do.
We need the government to help.
Yes, exactly. Black people cannot solve this one on their own. So what I would add to that is that poverty makes everything worse. Number one.
Right.
You can be crippled, but if you're rich and crippled, it's a lot better than being poor and crippled. That's just an example. So one thing that the pandemic has really showed us is when initially when the pandemic hit, there were a lot of white people being struck with the COVID-19 and being hospitalized and dying. But then it quickly progressed to exclusively Black people dying at very, very high rates as compared to everybody else.
Right.
And that is the poverty factor. So already we have so many underlying conditions that are not being treated, but those same underlying conditions actually make you more susceptible to going on a ventilator and dying from COVID-19. So when it comes to mental health, it's actually a reflection of the same thing. Because we have so many underlying issues over there, as I said with the woman example I gave at the earlier part, it just compounds what is already there and makes it a lot worse. Because we don't have money in general, the systems around us are failing us all the time. You see, I live in Naperville, and if I have an issue in Naperville, I can easily get care. But if I'm in Chicago and I don't have money, it's going to be hard to get care. See, a lot of the people I see are actually white people. They're not Black people. And one of the biggest issues and barriers is healthcare. Healthcare is a very, very big barrier and a very, very big issue, because a lot of people see mental health care as something that, I can actually go without. So they don't want to go and be in a position where they're paying, let's say, $100 a month for medications and therapies and all that kind of stuff, or something that they feel that they can handle at the same time. But yet they're not handling it. And when you also add the stigma of our societies and the stigma of our communities, I'm from Ghana. And even if someone is saying that they're depressed, that means you're crazy. So even something as common as anxiety or depression, someone will be deemed as somebody who's crazy. So number one, people are underreporting. So they have statistics, but I can't even believe the statistics, because knowing my people, my Black people, we underreport things heavily. So they're giving the statistics over here. It's probably 2 or 3 times worse than what they're talking about.
Right.
Because a white man is suffering with anxiety, a black man is suffering with the same anxiety. A black man won't report it. He's not going to report it because, number one, he doesn't think that there's any help for him, and even he doesn't have faith in the care. One of the biggest things in the black community is that we don't have faith in the healthcare system. There's a statistic that says that in the healthcare system, only about 2% of practitioners and people who work in healthcare are black. That's a problem because number one, they found out that black therapists and black practitioners actually do a better job handling black people. Number one, right. But then number two, we already know that our people don't have that much faith and trust in white people because of the history that we've had with white practitioners and white people. There are all kinds of. We already know Serena Williams almost died in childbirth because they didn't believe that she was bleeding. So there's a 2-part thing where black people don't believe in the white people, but yet there's not enough black people to take care of the black people. So all these things are a problem when you also add all the institutions that are not available. Heather was mentioning about also Mr. Solomon was also mentioning about the mental health care in the schools. Last year and the year before, I was part of a program called CIS, which is Communities in Schools. So they set up a program where they get therapists inside the schools to talk to kids who have been deemed, I guess, a problem or have some kind of potential problem. So the kids see their counselors. If the counselors see a problem, then they refer them to the CIS program. And during the pandemic, it stopped because we couldn't go to the schools anymore. So a lot of these people who are getting the care are not the white kids because their parents are handling it at their therapists. But the black kids who don't have any therapists, who probably don't have any health care and who are on Medicare, this is the best that they can do. And now it was completely cut off. So it's really, really bad for black people. And as you're asking what can be done, number one, we need to find a way to get some better health care for black people because seriously, Medicare and Medicaid is not it. As a practitioner myself, the place I work at, they don't even take Medicare and Medicaid. They don't. Because it's a difficult process in payment. Right. So Medicaid and Medicare was better and people were able to get paid what they're supposed to be getting paid. They would accept these people. But a lot of people don't even like handling Medicaid and Medicare because the payments aren't enough. And also there's so much hassle in going through the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So the systems that are in place are already against us. And then you add the stigma of what we have in our communities and the distrust that we have for the medical society, it all compounds and makes it so much harder for us. As I said, if you're crippled with money, it's okay. But when you're crippled with no money, it makes everything so much worse. And it's so much worse for black people because we are so much more impoverished than the white people. So those are certain things that really, really need to be addressed before we can actually get to a place where we're actually getting the help that we need.
Powerful permission, my brother. Thank you so much.
Can I comment here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so this is just to add to what the pastor said, that is Pastor Akrong. So that is true. But there is a little bit too that I think people of color will have to do. I think you mentioned it. I just want to highlight it a little bit.
Okay.
For example, in my practice over here, when I see a Caucasian over here, you realize that he or she knows why he is coming in for therapy. But when I see a person of color, most of the time when they come, they are coming for advice. And as the two of you will agree with me, when it comes to counseling is not advice. It is not suggestion. Suggestion is our last thing that we give. Counseling is about exploration of the issue and then maybe trying to identify possible solutions and then what it can be done. And as Pastor said, majority of people of color really don't believe even in the counseling. So sometimes they even only come here when they have been asked either by their pastor or even they have been mandated by the court to come. You see, so I think as much as the system needs to be, modified a little bit, I think also that as blacks or as people of color, especially those of us who are professional, we have a responsibility of reaching out to them to explain the purpose of mental health and then for them to understand, especially during this month, so that they will know that mental health is not about being crazy. Mental health is not about I have a problem, so I'm going to solve it. mental health is also about our complete well-being, and it is very important that we take it seriously.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, you're still watching the Progressive Mind Show, and I'm learning a lot this evening. I am stacking my info library when it comes to mental health awareness, and this is very good. I hope you are taking a thing or two out of this discussion we are having, and we want to encourage you to share the feed if you're on Facebook and on YouTube. We have a few comments I would like to read out. I think there's a question on that I wanted to get to Heather. I think there's a question specifically for Heather, so let me let's look at it. It says, why do you think asking for mental health care is stigmatized in the Black community?
Okay, well, I think we kind of just like covered it, so I'm just going to add a little bit more to it. So I would say that first off, it's pathology, I would say, versus the mentality. First off, you have to understand that the pathology is pretty much what's going on inside your head that causes you to act and behave a certain way. Could it be traced back to how you're uprooted in your childhood? And depending upon that is exactly how you're going to be looking at if you need mental health to talk about what's bothering you. Or in the Black community, do you need to talk about your business to a complete stranger? So that's kind of like what we're working with. Then the mentality is, I don't know if I need this. And let me say this, if we need more family and friends and parents to support our loved one that is experiencing things that they can't talk about. If you're witnessing odd behavior, it's not no more being a mean uncle. No, that mean uncle may have some serious issues and you need to address them and support their walk. We need to, and also, like they said, we brought up the Medicaid and Medicare. And let me just say this. If you do have Medicaid and Medicare, but you can find an agency that's willing to accept the insurance, I would say go. And this is the thing. Once you show up for session, you have to take heed to the therapist's knowledge and wisdom. You have to get the proper diagnosis, take the medicine, and stick to a plan. Let me say this, and I'm quoting the rapper Jay-Z. He said, it's nothing crazy about talking about your problems. And you have to realize, just like you would go to a beautician, you need to go to a beautician. You need to pay all $100, $150, $300 for your hair. Start to have that conversation. I need to pay that amount for my mental health, for my mind, for my stability. See, we have to start having a better conversation about why I need to talk about postpartum depression, being depressed, stress, and etc. We have to start supporting each other. I, me, you, and it's got to be a village, a neighborhood thing that's got to happen. We have to stop making fun of each other. If we see our brother and sister that's low, we got to pick each other up and carry their burdens and take them to session and say, I do think you could benefit from therapy. Support their journey. And we bringing up the white community. The white community, they support each other with therapy. The husbands, the wives, the children, etc. Some of this is what are we doing towards each other?
Can I add a little bit here?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, just to add to what Heather said, let's look at it this way. And let's say you are sick and you never paid attention to just when you were experiencing headache and those kind of minor symptoms. So maybe you get so seriously sick and then you are sent to the hospital and then you die. Another person gets sick. They didn't pay attention to it and then get to the hospital and then dies. So now it gets to a point now, anytime you talk about hospital, that particular community, they think if you go to the hospital, you are going to die. That is how mental health has been stigmatized among people of color. The reason is that sometimes they wait too long till their issues are so serious that when they begin to seek their services, in fact, the family itself is, oh, you need services because you are crazy. You understand what I mean? Because they have waited too long. And I'm telling you, mental health is very serious.
Yeah.
Health is very serious. So if you don't take care of it, when you begin to go through the abuse, you begin to be traumatized, and then you go through all these things. If you don't take care of it, you get to a point where Now you are over the threshold. So then you behave like that, and therefore everybody. So now the person who wants to even take care of it right from the beginning, they feel the person is crazy.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that is where the stigmatization comes in.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
First off, I want to tell Heather, some of us don't have to pay too much for our haircuts at this point.
I know, but the women do.
No. But the stigmatization is, this is how I see it. You know, as Black people and people of color, our persona is one of strength.
I was going to say that, yeah.
We have a persona of strength. A strong Black man, strong Black woman. When you talk about mental health issues, it exposes a weakness that no one wants to reveal. You see, let's say if I come down with a flu, in our communities, it's common to everybody. It's very, very hard to actually prevent from getting a flu. If I come down with cancer, I really couldn't prevent it. So it's not a question of strength. But with mental health issues, what I found is that it's a question of strength, our mental fortitude, and also our spiritual strength. Especially as a pastor, when someone goes through a mental health issue, oh, this person doesn't have a good relationship with God. Someone has a mental health issue, oh, this person has so many emotional issues over here. That person doesn't do this, that doesn't do this. So it exposes such a weakness that we are not willing to expose to the world, especially as Black men, as Heather and Mr. Solomon said. For Black men especially, our persona is strength. It is strength. So the deepest weakness that we have is mental issues. If they say he's depressed, oh, this one too. Oh, look at all his muscles and all that kind of stuff. Oh, this one too is depressed. So that's the kind of view that we have. So in order to maintain our persona of strength, we have to deny the fact that we're even going through all kinds of issues. So that's one of the reasons why I feel that the stigma is really, really bad in African American communities and also in African communities, because we don't want to expose ourselves. And as Heather says, that now you got to go and then tell you all your business, because these things aren't usually, they don't always originate with the person. One of the first things we ask in our interviews is, what was your upbringing like? What are your family dynamics? What did your father do? What did your mother do? What kind of education do they have? And in the Black communities, we are very, very averse to exposing ourselves and our families in that kind of manner to people we don't know. So it's once again, it's also again playing on our weaknesses. That's one of our biggest weaknesses. Our kryptonite is exposing ourselves, and then also exposing ourselves to criticism from other people that we're not strong. Right. So I think deep down, that's one of the biggest reasons why there's such a stigma.
Wow. It's deep. It's deep what we're going through. I guess one would be asking, how do we find solutions to these? Some of the solutions are beyond us, as they said. You know, the local officials, local politics, or local officials or state or federal officials would have to respond to some of these questions for us, because maybe we need more funding. Right, the Black community need more funding, more health care to take care of some of these things, some of these struggles that we're dealing with. We have Pearl Yara just joined us. She says, great topic. Thank you so much, Pearl, for joining in. Georgette Doku says, I'm really enjoying this discussion. Thanks, y'all. Thank you, Georgette, for joining us. There's a question for Pastor AKWETEY from Baba. Before I read out that question, Pastor AKWETEY and Mr. Solomon, me being Ghanaians, being Africans, we have this stigma, and I want us to deal with this a little bit before we go to Heather and maybe Baba's question. So, as you all mentioned, in Ghana or in Africa, if you are seen with dreadlocks, in these days, I think that stigma is probably just reducing a little bit. But a couple years ago, if you had dreadlocks, you were outright seen as an outcast or someone who has mental issues. Actually, you were not seen as a mental issue, someone who has mental issues. You were seen as a madman. Like you said, for means you're crazy. Like you are, just for the mere fact that you have dreadlocks, unless the people in the community know you. But if they don't know you, and you show up with dreadlocks in a certain community, and you happen to be dressed up casually, you are looked at as that. You are looked at as that. And so can we help maybe, can we help educate the Black community, I mean, the African community, how we can deal with some of these different personas, right? With drug laws, how do we identify someone who has mental health issues? Not necessarily looking outwardly, right? Or paying attention to their outlook, but looking at certain signs, because the person who has dreadlocks may be all right, and the one who has a tie and suit is the one that's probably struggling. And so how do we identify these signals when it comes to mental health within the African community? I'll start with Mr. Solomon.
Well, I think that we all have to get to a point where we have to limit our level of being judgmental. Because that is one thing. As a Ghanaian, that is one thing I've noticed about us. We are judgmental to a very high level. It's like, if we see you, we want you to present a certain way. So that non-judgmental thing is what we have to begin to develop.
Right.
Number two, I mean, if you are not a professional, you cannot and you shouldn't be able to assess someone's mental health. So who are you to judge or to make an assessment that Pastor AKRONG is crazy or Solomon is crazy? You can't say, and we shouldn't say that. So there is this kind of education that we need. I also believe that we have to get to a point where, like here in America, the month of May is Mental Health Month. We need to begin to realize that now the world is no longer Africa, Asia, it is global. We are everywhere. We are trading. We are doing everything. So as a country, we need to begin to also set things up like that so that we can educate the people to know that someone of a particular color, someone of a particular dressing, someone of a particular appearance is not crazy or is not normal, but it is just accept the person the way
they are.
Yes, yeah. So these are some of the few things. In fact, we need to create that kind of awareness for people to begin to, acknowledge that, and then maybe begin to learn.
Pastor AKWETEY, thank you so much, Mr. Solomon. Pastor AKWETEY, help us also educate us, since this is your expertise in this area. If a Ghanaian is listening to you and they probably have this old-fashioned mentality of looking at people with a certain look as mentally derailed folks, help educate us to how we can alleviate that. Again, the situation has gotten better, but we have to do more awareness, like Mr. Solomon said. So if you can help us.
As I 100% agree with Mr. DARKO and what he said, it's really hard to make that assessment or make that diagnosis if you're a lay person. It takes a while to have the experience and the education to make those things. But as a regular person, just talk to the individual. Hey, are you going through some things? Is there something really, really troubling you? What's going on? Well, I see you're behaving this way, Is there something really, is there a real problem with you? That doesn't take any school knowledge. That doesn't take any book knowledge or any experience. It's a simple fact that you see an issue and then you question somebody. If they're open enough to tell you, then you can point up to somebody who can help. But if they're not, then of course you've done your part. But if you see from afar, don't just say, oh, that person's just crazy. Go and talk to that person, especially if it's a family member or friend. Like, hey, I noticed that this is going on. Because for Solomon and Heather, those issues are usually mild to moderate. By the time you come and see me, it's moderate to severe because I'm dealing with medication.
Right. So what are some of the things we should look out for? Let's say, so I think that's on me. I wanted to ask, actually, if you were living in a community and you saw, let's say you were a member of course, we all live in communities. So if you saw a friend or someone who you were close to with a certain pattern or a pattern of behavior that you think is not usual of that person, right? What I'm trying to say is, what are those pattern of behaviors that we can look out for to determine that maybe this person might be going through this? Not necessarily approaching them, but if we can identify it, then maybe we can tell a loved person or someone who's close to them to say, hey, maybe you should look at this person very well, or find a way of approaching that person, just like you guys advise, to say, hey, maybe, is there something going on? Find a very loving way of discussing it. But for me, what are those behavioral tendencies or things that we can pick when there's something going wrong with someone?
Let me even say this, and sorry that I cut in. So to my host, I think that just as we have said earlier on,
it's Alinco.
Well, yeah. So Mr. Alinco, this is the whole thing. If you are not close to the person, if the person is not your family member, if the person is not your friend, it will be weird, it will be judgmental, it will be stigmatized for you to even suspect that. So in the first place, that is out of the question, unless you are related to the person. Now, if I'm to take your question the way you ask it, though, yes, just like what the pastor said, right? For me and Heather, if it is mild and moderate, we all have mild and moderate all the time, to tell you the truth. When it comes to mental health, it is of different level. It is when you begin to have psychotic type of this thing. That is when, let's say, you see Solomon working on this. I'm like walking on the street, talking to himself, and then maybe making some gestures. Then that one, you begin to maybe take more notice if you are close to the person. Then, but you see, one thing is when people become psychotic, they themselves they don't know the level they are.
Right.
At that point, they need help, either from a family member.
Okay.
Right.
So, Pastor AKWETEY, maybe, and Heather, thank you so much, Solomon, for saying that. So, Pastor AKWETEY, I also want to ask you personally, unless you want to respond to my first question. But I want
to respond to that. I just want to reiterate that it's very hard as a layperson to go and then make those observations and all that kind of stuff, because it's kind of hard to see.
Okay, it's hard. Let me interrupt for a second. I understand that it's hard to see. Where you are living with someone who is behaving, is exhibiting bipolar attributes, right? And from what we know of bipolar is that someone who is maybe they're angry today, the next moment they are calm, and then before you know it, they're angry again, right? Is that the definition of bipolar, if I'm correct?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Oh. Okay. So if it's not the definition of bipolar, I'm trying to talk about someone who has that symptom, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you don't know that is bipolar, but someone who's exhibiting those traits. But what I'm trying to say is, will you be able, how do these people behave for you to understand that maybe there's something going on wrong with them? What are the things that they do, right? If someone is behaving a certain way, could you read between the lines just because of what they're doing? And what are those behaviors?
Okay, I can definitely do that. But the thing is that there are so many diverse disorders.
Okay.
You'd have to be a specialist to be able to identify specific things. And also, disorders actually come together. So one person can suffer from several things at the same time. Okay. As I give you the opening example, this woman had dissociative personality disorder. She had paranoid, schizophrenic, and then she was also having OCD. So those are three different diagnoses, all wrapped up in one person. Okay. So you're not going to, sometimes you won't see definitively one thing, because maybe when you go to sleep that this person is now active. So it's really, really hard unless you know the real kind of questions to ask specifically for each disorder. You won't be able to find out those. That's why I said there's so many diverse things that you really need to be able to pinpoint those kind of things.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Go ahead. Finish up, Pastor AKWETEY.
So that's why I say, it's very, very hard to make that kind of assessment. But in general, overall, for me, when I'm making a diagnosis, one of the main features in everything is that the disorder is supposed to disrupt the person's personal, social, and work life. So if we meet those 3 requirements over here, that's where you get into the clinical level of diagnosis. But not everybody's at that level to where they are completely disrupted from work, from family, and their social life. So if you see somebody who's clearly disrupted from work, from family, from social life, and their personal life over here, then that's definitely a sign that the person is having some serious issues that definitely need to be addressed. That's when you need to come and see me and probably go on medication.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me give this example. And what I want to go into is those types of disorders you mentioned, Pastor AKWETEY. Maybe if you can tell us what they are, right? Like what is if somebody has, what was the first one again? Those are big jargon. So
the dissociative personality disorder, paranoid schizophrenia, and OCD.
Okay, so maybe you can break it down as to what these are. Like if somebody has it, what are the what they do? Can you help with that?
Actually, let me actually, those are the ones that we actually don't see as often. If you're going to have any help, it would be rather better to use the ones that we actually see quite often.
Okay, which are bipolar or
mood? We generalize it as mood disorders, which is usually bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder actually has 2 main facets. And you mentioned that bipolar disorder, today the person is angry and today the person is happy over here. No, that's not bipolar disorder.
Okay, what is that? What is that though?
That one you can actually, I prepared something to talk about borderline personality disorder. So a lot of people who have borderline personality disorder, in general, the lay people think that that's what bipolar disorder is, but they are 2 completely different things. Bipolar disorder, usually people display those kind of behaviors over months at a time. So if someone is what we call manic, that means they're hyper and they don't sleep, they don't eat, they don't take care of themselves. They're doing very, very high risk things, spending a lot of money, having a lot of sexual encounters without any kind of protection, disrespecting people and acting in a way that they normally don't act. That's what we call manic bipolar disorder, and that's bipolar 1. But then we also have bipolar 2 disorder. So bipolar 2 disorder is somebody who's actually displaying depressive symptoms. So you wouldn't consider bipolar because they're depressive, but then mixed with that depressive system. So let's say they're 2 months they're depressed, and for 2 weeks they're going to have what we call hypomanic symptoms, where they're not depressed and they're not manic, but yet they're in between being manic and depressed. That's hypomanic, so a little bit more elevated than normal. So that's bipolar 2. But then even within the 2, you have bipolar with psychotic features. You can have bipolar 2 with psychotic features, and then the 2 can intermingle. So it's, as I said, from a lay person's point of view, it's hard to determine. Okay. I can't look at somebody and determine those things. I have to sit down, look at their history, look at their parents, look at their family members, then go and ask certain questions to actually get that kind of information. And even when I do, it's not easy to determine. So for a lay person, it's almost impossible.
Good, thank you, Heather.
Can I add something little over there, if you don't mind?
Please.
Pastor AKRONG, thank you very much. I think that was very, educative. About 7-8 years ago, or even about 10 years ago, we used to have what we call a DSM-4. So with the DSM-4, we have Axis 1, Axis 2, all the way to Axis 5. Right now, we have actually moved away from this DSM-4. We are in DSM-5. So when it used to be like the DSM-4, any diagnosis you see on Axis 2, technically speaking, what it means is that you cannot actually change it. It is going to be with the person. It becomes like a personality of that person. So in that case, you are only able to manage it. You will be able to manage it either with medication and some kind of talk therapy and those kind of things. So I just wanted to add that to what Pastor AKRONG said, because that is very critical. So in that case, the family members will be able to note that maybe every 6 months, this is what happens. Every 1 year, this is what happens. That is what is happening. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Solomon, thank you so much for adding that knowledge to what Pastor AKWETEY said. Pastor AKWETEY said, we really appreciate that great info you passed on. Heather.
Yes.
I know you're shuffling a document. You're trying to pull up some disorders. Please help us identify some very basic or common disorders that we come across, in our communities that we may not know that, of course, you have the names for, and then tell us those the attributes of those type of disorders.
Okay, so they were very broad and scientific. So then I'm gonna come really like small in what I'm going to say. So let me just say, if I were to take depression, and no, that was a no slants. So let's just say if I was going to take depression, certain things that you may look for could be irritability from the person, a lack of energy, low sleep. They can start to have like low symptoms of low self-esteem. They don't feel very confident or engaged in certain activities that they used to at one particular point enjoy doing. So you can be the social isolation, withdrawal, agitation. It can be a change in sleeping patterns. Maybe they're waking up a little bit too early. Maybe it's insomnia. So even though like I am hearing, it's hard for just a regular person to say, hey, you depressed. But sometimes people are nosy. So I appreciate those nosy, outgoing people, because if you start to see a friend that used to be always up and you notice a mood change, you can gently check in with them and kind of like say, hey, I'm here for you. You want to go to church? Do you want to kind of like check in with somebody? Do you even do the counseling thing? You have to just kind of, I would say, as my professor used to say, be very creative. If you don't, because I don't know, like therapists, we're just not walking down the street engaging people and saying, are they going through something? So I would say if it starts in the home, kind of look for those patterns that are a little off, and then try to gently talk to your loved one about their mood change specifically.
Thank you so much. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we will be going back to our panelists to help discuss this very important subject. Today, we're talking mental health and the pandemic, staying balanced. And of course, in recognition of mental health awareness, this month is, of course, the month for it. We can't do any other thing than to recognize this day, of course. So we'll take this short break. When we come back, the show will continue. There are a few comments that have come through. I'm definitely going to read them right after this break. So please stay tuned. Also, make sure you are sharing the feed while you are taking in the information. Please make sure you are sharing. It's 7:32 p.m. CST here in the studios of Progressive Minds. We're located in Chicago. We shall be right back.
Check out this beautifully made artistry of coffee tables made from a combination of recycled tires, jute ropes, wood, and fabric to suit your style. Yes, we make to order. These coffee tables can help you make a statement in your bedrooms, offices, and living rooms. But remember, we only ship within the USA and Canada after shipping cost is paid. Call Jasper Designs on 1-306-203-2650 or email us at dodoyaira@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at Jasper Love or follow Pearl Yaira Agboka on Facebook. Don't be left out. Please place your orders now.
And we are back. If you've been watching for the past hour and a half or so, we have been talking to Pastor AKWETEY AKRONG, who's also a nurse practitioner, mental health nurse practitioner, Mr. Solomon Y. DARKO, who is a CEO of Deeper View Counseling all the way in Connecticut, and then Heather Duke is a therapist. We are obviously having discussions about mental health within the Black community specifically, but we're looking at mental health in general as well. I said we will be taking comments, so definitely let's go to these comments that have come through. There are a couple of things that I want to talk about. Heather, I know, does marriage and divorce counseling.
Marriage and family therapy, yes, that encompasses it.
Great, and then she does grieving therapy too. That is very, very important, considering the number of people we've lost during this pandemic, and how she's been dealing with that. We'll come to it. So Pearl says, please, is it only medications that those kind of people need? Because I know some people benefit from just counseling. Okay, so I think maybe after taking those comments, we would have your response to that. And then she continues to ask, I don't think it's easy to go and talk to people about that. People will actually hide it than talk about it because of how others will say about what others will say about them. Right. I think that's a very great point, Pearl. And would you want to respond to Pearl's question real quick before we take the other comments so we don't forget? I think she's asking basically, if people who are having mental health issues, would it be more of medication or just counseling or both? What is the more, I'll say, let me see here. 1 second. Let me see if I can get this comment. But Pastor AKWETEY, I mean, in your practice, what is the more common recommendation? Has it been more of just medication or counseling or both?
As succinct answer as possible. So not everything requires medication, number one. Some things actually are not, medication is not effective. So we don't prescribe medication. So a lot of the people who come and see me, they've actually been referred by their therapist. So somebody like Heather or somebody like Mr. Solomon has actually said, okay, well, you need a higher level of care. So we're going to refer you to a psychiatrist or nurse practitioner so they can put you on medication. For most part, we don't really start prescribing medication until a situation has reached the moderate to severe level. If somebody is at a moderate level, at a moderate level, then it's usually manageable with counseling. But you have to handle those things in the early phases. But when it gets too late and somebody is not taking care of themselves, like somebody with depression falls deep into depression, they can't go to work, they can't eat, they're not taking showers, they're not brushing their teeth, they're barely getting out of bed. That is when they actually really need medication and treatment, because at that time, counseling is not going to be very effective.
Great. But in your line of duty, line of operation over these years, right? Mm-hmm. What has been the common thing for you? Has it been both or one or the other?
Yeah, we prescribe for most disorders. It's a combination of counseling and medication. As I said, as you get to the more severe levels, that's when medication is warranted. But if it's not too severe, counseling is good enough in most cases. And counseling actually is what actually helps somebody to maintain their level of mental health for a longer period of time. I can give somebody medication and it helps for maybe 6 months to a year. But if they don't match it with counseling and things like cognitive behavioral therapy or family therapy to solve the actual issues that are going on over there, the medication can actually either be ineffective or I would have to continue to increase the dose. And that can also lead to further problems. So counseling is always a good idea in a combination of medication.
Heather, in your line of practice, you do more of counseling than medication, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. And Mr. Solomon, that goes for you as well.
Yes, but let me add something to it. One thing we have to recognize is that mental health has different levels, as Pastor has stated. So we have the mild, the moderate, and then we have the severe. And then also we have different categories of them. You understand? So there are some of them, medication just creates the window for treatment. You see, for someone who is suicidal, those kind of things, but it creates a window. Yeah. So in my line, all that I do is I will do the assessment and then I'll be able to judge whether it is moderate, whether it is mild, whether it is severe. And even that, it depends on the type of mental health issue before I'll refer to Pastor AKWETEY.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mr. Solomon. So I'll go try and get through the rest of the questions, and then we can go back to our guest. I say questions or comments from Facebook. So this is from Josephine Ashiati. She says, Alinco, this is a great topic to talk about in our societies. Thanks for bringing awareness on the topic. Thank you so much, Josephine, for sharing your thoughts on this. Georgia says people in dreadlocks was also seen or known to have fetish background. Yes, in Ghana, all types of, I would say, all types of ideas are formed again around people who have dreadlocks. We give them all types of names and titles. Very, 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 very unfortunate in Africa, not Ghana, but in Africa in general. So, but as I said earlier, that type of stigma is reducing. We've seen people being more open, more I'll say lenient. Now, I wouldn't say lenient, but more open and more accommodating, to folks who may have dreadlocks or decide to wear them. And so the trend is looking better for the African community, but we can do more by being very accepting to people who look different than us. This is Ashia. She says the panelists are very informed. Thank you, Ashia, for bringing in your comment. Let's see if we can get some more. Thank you, Solomon from Pearl. And this is thank you. Well explained, Pastor AKWETEY. All right, so let's look at. I think Heather is back.
Yes.
Great. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
All right. So when you talk about grieving, family grieving, what exactly? Because that's part of your profession. So what is that exactly? And then I want to have a follow-up question for you.
Okay, so grief is, when you hear the word grief, that is associated with a loss of a loved one, and they could have passed away of natural causes, a sickness, gun violence, and etc. So now they lost their loved one, so they're in a grieving phase. Sometimes, like the DSM manual has bereavement disorder. If it has if you start to have persistent symptoms longer than, I think, that 3 to 6 month period, then you're placed in there. Sometimes we kind of look at it as like a complicated mourner as well. So it's like, think of grief, bereavement, and mourning, and that's all associated with death.
Okay, so how do you help people when they're going? I mean, the follow-up question that I have for you is that what I said before the break. So the pandemic and how people have been suffering from it. There's been a lot of death, due to it. So how do you walk people through these? We just want to know, how you're able to handle and help people suffering from these deaths from the pandemic.
Okay, yeah. So pretty much when I work with people with grief, I have to be very structured because it's such a complicated topic and it has affected them deeply. So I also like to review the 7 stages of grief. It's like anger, depression, denial, bargaining, acceptance, and I know I'm probably skipping some, and shock. And and denial as well. And as we go through each of those phases, I ask the client, which phase are you kind of stuck on? And we kind of process why they're stuck on, let's just say, the anger, because they weren't ready for their loved one to pass. And then the bargaining phase, some of them are kind of in between and say, well, it should have been me and not my daughter, and etc. So I let them process that for a while. And then after that, I also recommend a grief handbook. And it provides the chapters of how you look at grief, certain things people are tired of. Like some people literally are tired of, I'm so sorry for your loss. Some clients say, if I hear that one more time, I'm gonna scream. So we process some of the wrong things people say when your loved one has passed. Some people are uncomfortable with dealing with someone who's lost a loved one. They don't know what to say or how to say it. So we just process when you hear those statements, and I say they're coming from a good place, but they don't know that's triggering you. So we walk through that grief handbook. We read it, and I can also provide the link afterwards. After we do that, I say it's time to maybe do a ritual. And these rituals can consist of writing your loved one a letter, lighting a candle, selecting their favorite poem, and they can come into session and like read the letter. They can say, oh, this was a song that reminded me of my cousin. We were extremely close. Because when I work with grief, I say sometimes we're triggered by music. We are triggered by a television show that reminds us of our loved one. And people say, well, the grieving process should be 6 months and get over it. But I'm a huge component that grieving is like lifelong. Like you just don't get over losing a loved one, losing a cousin, losing a relative. It stays with you. So I provide that safe space for them to cry, do the rituals, and go over the grief book. And I hold their hand as we go through all the stages, the 7 stages of grief, until they are back to being normal. And that means they can go back to work, they can make a balanced meal, they can connect with their friends, they're not sobbing, they're okay. And they can talk about the memory of their loved one and not like fall up, lack of better words, like kind of come apart. They're okay. Right.
What would you say has been the success rate for you in handling these type of grieving cases?
Okay, so actually I was fortunate. I didn't lose any clients They didn't come in saying, okay, I lost someone to COVID. Some of the stuff was just out of just a cancer, a widow, etc. But the rate of losing loved ones to COVID, and maybe the pastor can help me, it was extremely high. I just didn't get those numbers coming into my office, but I would help doctors process seeing patients coming in with COVID and passing away, because they were thrown on the front line, and I had to work with doctors and help them process that space of seeing that grief so quickly. And but I don't have that number, so if one of them come in.
Right. I guess what I'm also trying to get to is, so for all those people that I've been working with to so they can overcome their grief of their loved ones, you know, do you follow up? Do you follow through with them to make sure that they've actually gotten over it? And if that's the case, like, what would you say is the success rate? So let's say, you know, if you took care of 10 people, did they always come back and say, look, thank you, I'm over my grief, I'm back on my feet now, you know, like, you know, I'm moving on with life?
You know what? Actually, I'm gonna just say this: in a perfect world, I would love to see that, but I don't, because once you lose a person to grief, I always say you belong to this club. Yeah, you're always a bit off. You know, the month they passed away is a trigger. So you're gonna be, if they passed away in January, guess what? Every January that comes, you feel a little down or sad. When the holidays come, you don't want to celebrate as usual. So they're never back to normal. But if I can get them functional from what I saw, where they weren't leaving the house, they didn't want to engage, they didn't want to eat, but I can get them eating 2 meals a day. I can get them going back to work, and maybe the boss, I have a conversation with them. Can we decrease the workload? What can we do to make them still at work but sustainable? So it never, let me say this, it never ends, but I have a plan. I put them on a week, we see counseling weekly or twice a week, so they can check in with me. I say email me, text me if you get triggered, you know, even in the middle of the night, you know, and it's still an ethical conversation. But I have a doorway open, because that's a hard walk for them. They're like, where did my loved one go? Did they go to heaven? Do you believe in reincarnation? We have to sit with that when the body is down in the ground and they can't hold them anymore. Walking through the hospice process. You change when you bury somebody. You're not the same. Wow,
that's very, very, very powerful. Mr. Solomon, DARKO, you have been working within, I don't know if your practice has been heavily focused within the African community in Connecticut, but tell us about your practice, the type of people that come to you, the type of services that you provide, and maybe some of the challenges that you have noticed within the Black community in general, I mean the African community, as it relates to the pandemic.
Well, thank you. So my license is LPC, Licensed Professional Counselor. My expertise is usually using cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, you will be surprised that I have not even seen one Ghanaian, even though I live in a city where we have more than 1,000 or 2,000 Ghanaians over here.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to
is that in Waterbury or Connecticut in general, or Waterbury?
No, Waterbury, just Waterbury.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I live in the center of Waterbury. In fact, where my office is, it is close to an area where it is so easily accessible.
Got it.
Now, my clientele, you'll be surprised, 70% of my clientele are actually white.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, they are Caucasians, yes.
Pastor Akwetey is not surprised.
Yes, yeah. And then I have maybe about 15% Hispanic, and then the rest will be African Americans. And then I have maybe among the African Americans or among the other Blacks, I have about 3 or 4 South Africans who come here. So these are the population that I see. Now, majority of my clients are actually suffering from either borderline personality disorder, bipolar, and then they show these symptoms of anxiety, depression here and there. So I actually collaborate with an APRN who I normally will refer to for medication assessment and management. Yeah. So the challenges that I've had over here is that even among the few blacks that I see or people of color that I see, um, in fact, until this telehealth, their major issue has to do with transportation.
Okay.
Then, even with the telehealth, the type of phones that they use is such that it is not easy to even have, like, yes, I mean, like successful this thing with them. And even for those who have very good phones, sometimes you will see that their phones have been disconnected. So they can't get to you, you cannot get to them.
Wow.
So the challenges are very huge. But, that is why I'm saying that, you see, when it comes to the people of color or the African American community, there is a lot that I believe that we need to also focus on to be able to access some of these services. But other than that, the few that come, they actually prefer to come in face to face, even during the pandemic, just to come and have the session, because even for those who are serious in their homes, they don't have those kind of, privacy, because they live in a home where maybe 2 or 3 people are sharing, the place, or they live at a place where they are going through domestic violence with their husband is home, so they would prefer to even take the bus and then come. So these are some of the few challenges that I have encountered.
Thank you so much. Pastor AKWETEY, let me describe a situation. Let me narrate a story and see if you can help me identify what was the problem then.
Okay.
Well, when I was in Ghana, Tema to be specific, there was a friend of ours who we would all do the same things. We play soccer, hang out with. All of a sudden, we noticed that he would be by himself, walk alone sometimes, stand in the middle of the street for at least, he could stand still in the middle of the street for about 30 to 45 minutes. And this was not typical of him. Stand by himself, talk to himself. And sometimes if you talk to him, he will say something back. Sometimes he will not. But he will go home, dress up, eat, act normal. He wasn't aggressive. But then he had this change in his behavior, where he would stand by himself for a long time and not talk to anybody. Sometimes he'll be talking to himself whilst walking. And again, these weren't things that he was doing. We all thought that for years, this went on for years, at least 5 years. Well, at the point in time, we thought, okay, no, I'll say 4 years. At the point in time, we thought he was crazy. Typically in Ghana, you will be classified as a crazy person because he was acting weird. What type of mental, first of all, would that be a mental disorder situation for that type of person?
There are so many factors that you have to take into account. As I said, when we sit down to do an interview with somebody over here, it is not just a few observations that we take a look at. A lot of these things are actually hereditary. So one of the first things, as I said before, is we look at the family history, see if anyone in their family has actually had or suffered from anything even similar to that. And that gives us more clues as to what exactly is going on. Of course, from face value, what you're talking about, if someone has gone to a point where he's so much different than what he was doing, and he's standing in the middle of the street, my assumption, of course, not actually having an interview, is that he might be suffering from schizophrenia. Mostly people who are schizophrenics, actually, they start the schizophrenia at an early age. So usually you see that in the late teens or early 20s or even early 30s, that you see somebody who's been completely normal, and then all of a sudden they have a strong change inside their life, their way of thinking, their patterns, and they change their behavior to such a point where it is actually sometimes even fearful. But you made a statement that he wasn't aggressive. And that is one of the stigmas that we have of people who are in mental health, that people who are deemed crazy are always aggressive. One fact I want to bring to you is that people with mental health issues actually have violence perpetrated against them more than any other group in America. People who have mental health issues are abused more than anybody. So everyone is afraid of people who have mental health issues. But it should be the other way around, because those people get abused more often than any other group of people in America.
They do.
In the world, period.
Wow.
Can I have? Can I make
30 seconds? 30 seconds, please.
Oh,
okay. So I want our viewers to recognize that when we talk about mental health, it's not a bad thing.
Okay.
It is just like how we talk about medical health, everything. So anytime we say mental health, you see, the way our viewers will have to see it as this. If you feel like every year you have to go and do your regular checkup, then it is the same thing with mental health.
Okay.
Because we need to take care of it.
That's powerful. That's very, very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. You have to bring that comment out. So I really love it. Let's take a few more comments. This is from Georgette. I have really learned a lot. Thank you so much, Georgette. This is from Pearl. Pastor AKWETEY, how can one help a family member with borderline personality disorder if they are not ready to see a therapist? That's a great question. Let me take this one, and then Pastor AKWETEY, you can respond to that quickly. I think we should encourage ourselves and our kids to explore these counseling careers too. That is a very great observation, great comment, Georgette. This is from Pearl. And how can one help someone who seems to be grieving for years to get over their grief? Another question from Pearl is, this question is for Heather. Please, can you say some people can grieve for years? Can you, please, can you say? Okay, I think it's basically the same question that she asked. And this one is for Pastor AKWETEY as well. But I'll have you respond to that, Pastor, so that I don't bombard you with too many of them. Last comment from Milano Akwesi, very informative. Thank you, guys. And this is Pearl thanking Mr. Solomon, and then her thanking Pastor AKWETEY for explaining the point earlier. Pastor AKWETEY, can you please respond to this, and then we'll come to Georgia. Because of time, I think we have about 5 minutes to go, so we want to make the responses as quickly as possible. Pastor AKWETEY. I'm sorry, I think we couldn't hear you, but we can hear you now.
So for a long time, borderline personality disorder has actually been like an anomaly when it comes to mental health, because it's not like definitive what exactly they're suffering from. They have such emotional dysregulation that they are so sporadic. They're so, I don't know, they present so many different challenges to anybody who's trying to help them that they're actually, medication-wise, there's no recommended medication. There is none. And sometimes we support with different medications. I think one of the main ones that people use is probably antidepressants or mood regulating, mood stabilizing medications. But outside that, there's nothing that has been clinically found to be specific to handle those kind of things. With somebody with a borderline personality disorder, their relationships are horrible because they're very manipulative. They're very, very impulsive. They also do a lot of self-harm. And one thing about borderline personality disorder, these are the people that you would assume have bipolar disorder. That's what the world would look at and say that's bipolar, but that's borderline personality disorder. And one fun fact, or not fun fact, one fact about them is that they actually commit suicide at a pretty high rate. And the thing about them is that they commit suicide sometimes unintentionally. They try and manipulate the people around them with self-harm and also attempted suicide, that sometimes they attempt suicide and they'll plan it in such a way, okay, I'm going to swallow these pills. I know my husband comes home at 7 o'clock. I'm going to swallow these pills at 6:55. When he comes to see me on the ground, then he'll come and call the police and the ambulance, and they'll come and save me. The husband goes to somewhere else outside of work. He doesn't come home at 7 o'clock. Now the person is dead. So they try and manipulate people with all kinds of different things. They have such emotional dysregulation that it's very, very hard to actually treat it. So we use dialectical behavioral therapy. And of course, that's where you see Mr. Solomon and Heather for those cognitive and behavioral therapies. If you have somebody who's in your family and who's suffering from borderline personality disorder, the best thing that you can do is make them aware that there is a severe problem. let them understand that this is what their situation is causing, because usually their family members are pulling all their hair out because they cause so much issue because of the emotional problems that they have. They feel so empty. They feel so betrayed. They don't ever want to be abandoned. They have such abandonment issues that they do such strange things and such crazy things that you say to yourself, what is wrong with this person? What you always continue to say, what's wrong with this person? The person has issues. So the best way to actually get help for that person, if they don't want to, is let them understand the extent of their problems and how it's affecting the relationships and the family, and tell them, listen, we all need help. You can even start with family therapy, and from family therapy, you can individualize the therapy and get to a therapist like Mr. Solomon, and then probably seek medication if it's warranted from somebody like me. But just help the person to understand the impact of what they're going through and how it affects the family.
Thank you so much for a great response. Baba says, and then quickly, our time is up. So isn't it true that sometimes there is a disconnect between the counselor and the person attending the counseling? There are more white counselors than black counselors, as you said earlier. How is it a white counselor supposed to help in exploring an issue presented by a black person? Great question.
Counselors answer that one.
no, Pastor Kwete, but this was directed to you.
Okay, all right. No, well, it's a dilemma. But I think if black people are not available, then you can't seek help from someone who's not available.
Right.
You want to seek help from who's available. So as someone also said, like, seriously, it is now in time for people to be aware that there are profitable careers in mental health. Like, I'm a nurse practitioner. We get paid pretty well. My friend Mr. Solomon has his own practice over there. I'm assuming he gets paid pretty well. I'm also assuming that Heather gets paid pretty well. And I hate to address it that way as paid, but that's what motivates people to go into certain fields.
Right.
But it's very, very rewarding to help people. But then also it's also very rewarding because monetarily you are benefiting. So if we're able to tell people, because when I was a nurse and I used to work in intensive care, and when I went into the mental health, all my coworkers like, what are you doing? Why would you choose mental health? So there's such a stigma against mental health that even when you're a provider, there's a stigma against you. I guarantee you psychiatrists face the same thing from the other doctors, the cardiologists, and the rest of it. Oh, why would you go and then go into psychiatry? So we need to open up the minds of our young people to see that this is something that is not just profitable, but something that benefits the community as a whole.
That is so powerful. And it goes to the point that Mr. Solomon made earlier, that we don't have to see mental health in a certain, stigmatized lens, but look at it as you going to see your doctor for a general checkup. Like, it's just that simple, right? And so that was a very powerful statement. Well, it's 8 p.m. It's 2 minutes past 8, and all of a sudden, the time has come for us to end the show. I was going to ask you all to pick one mental health disorder and tell us the different stages. Because time is past, we still want to because some people still want to hear this. If you can make it quickly for us, that would be great. Maybe as brief as 30 seconds, boom, boom, boom. Can you, Heather, you promise to do that? Keep it under 30 seconds.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. But let me just try, okay?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so if we were to pick depression, and knowing that sometimes it's called major depression disorder, it's a chemical imbalance. It can be like a lack of serotonin, and that kind of means you're feeling down, you're feeling sad. And like, remember earlier, I said it affects your sleeping habits, your eating, and you get agitated, irritable. So you want to probably check in and see a therapist. You can always go on Open Paths, Psychology Today, and Good Therapy to check in, because people don't realize depression is invisible. So anybody could be depressed and not even know it because they don't look like it. So, but if you feel those symptoms or you see someone with those symptoms, have a kind dialogue and say you want to check in, you need some help, or etc. And CBT is good because it gets you activity based, swimming, journaling, yoga, etc. to elevate that mood, uplift the serotonin. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. One mental health disorder. Give us the different, stages, briefly, just like Heather did. Heather has set a very good example. So let's follow the example. Dr. Solomon, please. Mr. Solomon.
So something that I want us to take into consideration is ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Okay.
This is very prevalent, but sometimes we don't take it seriously. Now we have behavioral aspect, we have cognitive aspect, and then we have the mood aspect. So the behavior aspect is the impulsivity. You see the person taking some unnecessary risks. The person cannot sit there quietly or maybe just relax. Always they feel like they have to do something, right? And then when it comes to the cognitive side, they have difficulty actually focusing. And sometimes they easily forget, or they lack concentration, or they will also have like a racing mind thought. And those people, when it comes to the mood aspect, they easily get bored. It's like, I'm so bored, I need to do this, I need to do that. And those people, they can actually maybe just get some friends, maybe drink, maybe do some sex, those kind of other stuff. These are issues that sometimes people don't pay attention to, but I'm telling you, it makes a lot of people to lose a lot of money. It makes them to lose their family, and then they lose actually their children, and then they lose their job.
Wow. So these people need medical, that they need to see people like you, actually, right?
Yeah, me and then pastor.
No, I think when it gets to a certain point, that's when they go to see pastor, right?
No, but you see, ADHD said that you need some kind of medication sometimes just to, just to tame you. If I
calm you down.
Calm you down. Yeah.
Because your blood is too hot.
Exactly.
Pastor Akwete, one. You said you gave us the other one, the name. Okay. I'm sorry. We couldn't hear you, but you gave us one already. So maybe just pick another one.
Okay.
Because you mentioned schizophrenia.
No, I mentioned the borderline personality disorder. And actually, if you don't mind, I would actually just like to reiterate a few more points, because a lot of people don't understand it and they mislabel it as bipolar disorder.
Go ahead.
As I said with that one, just going over a few notes that I had over here, said these people usually have a deep emptiness and go through emotions very rapidly. They fear abandonment and they can be manipulative. This can cause them to commit suicide and sometimes unintentionally. These people are prone to self-harm, horrible relationships, they're impulsive, and they usually have intense bouts of anger and rage. As a result, they develop a lot of maladaptive behaviors and can be hard to tolerate. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is that people develop these kind of personality disorders as a result of previous trauma. Yeah. So a lot of people with borderline personality disorder is because of some trauma that they've received in early life. Sometimes they're kids and they've been raped, they've been sexually abused, they've been beaten, they've been neglected. So their mind naturally starts to come up with different ways to cope with those kind of things. So that's how they develop into that personality disorder. So it's a very, very big environmental component and then also a biological component, because if you have people with borderline in your family, then it's very likely that you also be having something like that. But then it has a very intense environmental component. As I said, with these people, they're extremely hard to handle, both medically and even as a family member. It's extremely hard to handle. So if you know somebody like that, and those are the people who go from 0 to 100 real quick. They'll be crying and this time, then they'll be laughing another time. They have just so many emotional roller coasters that it's really, really hard to manage. But that is actually borderline and not bipolar. That is borderline personality disorder.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Akwete. This has been very, very awesome. All too soon. Well, it felt very soon, right? Because I know they have a whole bunch of list of things they wanted to talk about, which we couldn't get to. But sometimes that's how it goes. Mental health is huge. The issue surrounding it is enormous. The pandemic, compounds it, and we can't digest everything in 2 hours on this show. But we hope to do it again with these professionals. Hopefully, they'll make time for us. And so we would like to thank you all for making a great show. But definitely, we need to give them their last words, right? I know you've given us a definition. Given us a breakdown of what some specific, some of these mental health disorders. But your last words, just close out with your last words, and it can be thank you, it can be bye-bye, but whatever it is, give us your last words for today, and we shall try to get you back on here again sometime. We'll start with Mr. Solomon.
Well, I think when it comes to mental health, look at your brain as the engine or the motor of the car. I'm telling you, no matter how beautiful the car is, if the motor is not working, there is a problem. So take mental health like that. If you are healthy, but your brain or things going on in your brain is not healthy, then you need to take care of that. So mental health is very important. Thank you.
How can people get to your organization, your company, your clinic?
Well, I have a website, www.deeperviewcounseling.com. We are located in Waterbury, Connecticut.
What makes you stand out from the other counseling in Waterbury?
Well, I mean, if you check my website, you realize everything is 5-star. It's just because I have realized that the most important thing for you to do in counseling is to be non-judgmental. You have to listen, pay attention to the person. Look, if possible, just talk for about 30%. Let the person who comes in talk about 70%. Acknowledge, validate, empathize with the person, and you realize how powerful listening is in counseling.
Powerful closing. Mr. AKWETEY, please. Pastor AKWETEY.
Yes.
Let me be specific.
as a pastor, what I would say, I mean, let Christ be your rock. This is what has helped me. This is what has helped me in my life, and I believe that if everyone would actually give Christ a chance,
yes,
they will see the result. And I think many people who have tried Christianity have not really gone to the point where they've actually given a wholehearted chance and an opportunity for Christ to expose himself and to have a way in their life. As I said, from my personal experience, give Christ a chance and let him be a rock. Out of everything that we have, our mind, body, soul, and spirit, the spirit is the only thing that is going to endure from this time onto the future and onto eternity. So it's the most powerful element of our being. If we're able to strengthen that spirit mind that we have through Christ Jesus and the word of God, I believe everything should be able to fall in order.
Wow. That is a powerful closing, Pastor AKWETEY. Miss Heather Duke, you have your last words. You have your last words.
Yes, I would just say healing is key.
Healing is key.
Healing is key. That's all.
You see how she did us? Yeah. All right. So this is from Pearl says, thank you all. I have learned a lot more today. Thank you so much for your comment. Thanks for addressing this issue, Dr. Solomon. I think that was when you were talking about looking at mental health as your general health, basically checking your general health each year. And this is from Bridget. I like that. Let Christ be your rock. God bless you. Okay. On that note, I want to thank my guest again, Pastor AKWETEY AKRONG, who is also a psychiatrist. He is a psychiatrist in Next Practitioning, right? That's it, right? Mental health next practitioner.
Psychiatric and mental health nurse practitioner.
Excellent. Psychiatric and, okay, you heard it. And then Ms. Heather Duke, who is also a family and grieving counselor, right? Yeah. Great. And then Mr. Solomon Yao DARKO, who is the CEO and founder of Deeper View Counseling, Waterbury, Connecticut. And he deals with adolescents, children, young people, family, and all of that. To my great guests, wonderful viewers, Pearl, Georgette, Baba, Rebecca, Bridget, all of you who chimed in, I just want to say thank you. Rare Black Jesus, all of you, Milano. Just want to say thank you so much for chiming in. We will definitely be coming your way. This Sunday coming, we're dealing with another very important show. So please join the Progressive Minds between 2 to 4 p.m. Heather, you back. Between 2 to 4 p.m. CST this Sunday. Next week, Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. CST, we shall be right here. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. This has been the Progressive Minds Show with your host, Alinco. I'd like to thank all the team that has been helping the Progressive Minds Show week in, week out for a great job you are doing. Again, to God be the glory. We shall see you this coming Sunday, 2 to 4. Pastor AKWETEY, Mr. Solomon, Heather, have a wonderful evening. Thank you all.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.